So let's get to Glass Onion. We're going to give you the Rotten Tomatoes, we're going to give you the IMDb, and we're going to give you the synopsis. This is a reminder. This is a spoiler-free review. So whether you've seen the movie or you haven't seen the movie, right? No spoilers to be found during this next segment. Rotten Tomatoes critic score currently has Glass Onion at 93%, audience with a 92%. IMDb has it at an 8.1 out of 10. Looks like we got a banger on our hands, Ricky Flex. Synopsis reads, Benoit Bloch returns to peel back the layers in a new Rian Johnson whodunit. This fresh adventure finds the intrepid detective at a lavish private estate on a Greek island, but how and why he comes to be there is only the first of many puzzles. Blanc soon meets a distinctly disparate group of friends gathering at the invitation of billionaire Miles Braun for their yearly reunion. Among those on the guest list are Miles's former business partner Andy Brand, current Connecticut governor Claire DeBella, shout out Connecticut, cutting-edge scientist Lionel Toussaint, fashion designer and former model Bertie J and her conscientious assistant Peg, and influencer Duke Cody and his sidekick girlfriend Whiskey. As in all the best murder mysteries, each character harbors their own secrets, lies, and motivations. When someone turns up dead, everyone is a suspect. Holy cannoli, that was a long synopsis. But before we jump into our initial reactions here, I want to get your familiarity with the Knives Out franchise, Ricky. Were you a fan of the 2019 Rian Johnson whodunit film, him coming off The Last Jedi? All right. Did you like this one? Does something you return to it often? What'd you like about it? Tell me.
Well, I would return to it often if it was streaming anywhere again. It was on Prime Video for a long time, but they took it off. Similar to like a lot of these movies that have sequels or legacy sequels, they take off the origin movie just before it hits theaters when you want to watch it the most. It's kind of weird like that. I don't like that part of the industry. That needs to change ASAP. But this is like the classic Knives Out is the classic movie that is in movie theaters this year. It was Everything Everywhere All at Once, where you hear about it. It's interesting, but are you going to spend 10 to 15 bucks on it? Maybe not. But then you hear it's amazing. It's like, oh, maybe I will. And you're giving it a thought. And then you hear through word of mouth, another person that's seen it says it's a must-see movie, maybe the movie of the year. And that was my connection with Knives Out, not only from a great ensemble cast with like a Daniel Craig, a James Bond in the middle of towards the end of his James Bond era, taking on a totally different type of role here. And same with another Chris Evans, Captain America, towards the end of his tenure there, and taking on a whole different approach to his acting career from the previous standpoint. So basically what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, it's the shocker banger of a movie that you have to go see in theaters. And then also this ensemble cast that makes you take a second look saying, oh my God, I know that person and that person. Wow. All these people are in a movie at the same time. And also maybe not in the orthodox fashion that I might know them as. That intrigues me. So in this one, similar yet different. I'm excited to talk to you about it because Knives Out is probably my favorite whodunit of all time. And I think I love whodunits. I think it should be respected more. And this is easily like one of the best I've seen as well. Just a spoiler alert, like this was a great movie.
Spoiler alert, non-spoiler alert. This was
Exactly.
a great movie. I dearly, I think fondly of 2019's Knives Out. I didn't have the greatest the greatest thoughts regarding Rian Johnson films in prior to this film coming out in 2019, just because of what he did with The Last Jedi. But what I figured out is that it seemed like he had something special when it came to these whodunits. It seemed like you're right. He gathered the right cast of actors, entertaining group like Jamie Lee Curtis. We haven't seen in a while. It seems like she's had a little bit of a renaissance since her returning to the Halloween franchise. You saw her in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Michael Shannon's always like an interesting character, like maybe like an actor that is pretty plain and flies under the radar. But when he's on screen, he's pretty eccentric and almost everything he does. Chris Evans, like going from the MCU, playing probably his second most, I guess, recognizable character here with Knives Out, the breakout of Ana de Armas. You're right. There's just so many recognizable faces. Oh, I know him. I know her. Wow, look at them here. Look at them interacting. It's all great. I thought the way Knives Out wrapped up was so satisfying to watch. Something that maybe this one I didn't think as much. I didn't think it did as well of a job wrapping everything up, providing closure for the audience. But I think we have a worthwhile sequel here, Ricky Flicks. I really do. And we're doing spoiler free, but it also has me wondering. This is a limited theatrical release from Netflix. It was weird when Netflix, like, it's a huge N, goes across, right? The big screen. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it doesn't do the boom type thing, doesn't make the noise that your TV does, like the little drums that go like back to back. But it was just interesting. I've never seen a Netflix theatrical release before, but I'm a little concerned that spoiler wise, some people are going to find out about this movie when they don't want to. And it seems like this movie did pretty well at the box office for only having 600 theaters. People are saying, like, I think Netflix is refusing to let out the official number of what it grossed at the box office this weekend, but people are saying, like, potentially, like, estimating around $15 million. Do you think this could have had a longer theatrical run and then maybe we put it out the same date on Netflix? Or are you okay with the 4-day release to gather some hype?
Yeah, I think usually when like looking at a company or whatever in any sense, any industry, it's like you want them to keep to their brand and like stick to who they are, stick to their guns, right? And Netflix is clearly like they changed the game. They were the industry, or they were the first mover in the streaming landscape. People staying at home to watch movies here. Movie theaters, are they going extinct? Oh, Netflix is driving them out of business, yada yada yada. So it makes sense why they're adamant in saying they're not going to go full release. And usually I'm on like their side, but in this situation, this is one of the rare circumstances where it's like they gotta get rid of this limited time release. They have to go full throttle, like a normal movie studio. If you're gonna lean into movies and spend all this money, right? Your losses are piling up, and from a financial standpoint, you can't afford not to go to the office unless you're seeing what they're doing now with the ad-supported tiers, lowering their cost structure there, but then also raising the cost structure of their premium plan now. So, in all, it makes sense what they're doing, but at one point, if you're going to continue to invest this heavily in movies, you're going to have to just do normal or at least 45-day windows if you want to continue to produce products like this that we saw this weekend. And for me, I didn't mind the Netflix like boom and like the showcase on the screen. I know we talked briefly after, but I thought it fit. I honestly thought it fit, and I could see them doing this more often. I know they're saying right now they're not, but I think they're going to see. Again, they're not releasing the figures specifically, the exact figures, but they're going to see that this did well. And again, our theater was sold out. The previous day, it was sold out all across the our theater as well. And I think they're going to see with projects like this that they're going to have to start doing this from a financial point of view, and also because the viewers, us, demand it. And I'm all on board for that.
Uh, yeah, I wonder if, like, is it more financially successful for them if it just goes like only for these 4 days and then goes to Netflix? It seems like it has the potential to do both. It's not like this movie is going to gross $100 million on the opening weekend and then everyone who's going to see it sees it in theaters and no one returns to it. It's going to come out on the week of Christmas. That's like one of the prime times where families get together and they watch movies. What's a popular like type of film people like families gather around for family movie night? It's who done it, like Agatha Christie type of movies. So to me, it's like, let it play longer. I think it's only going to benefit you guys. It generates even more buzz. It seems like this is going to be talked or discussed a lot in generating buzz for like the next week, but people might forget about it in the 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. And like, oh, here's Knives Out again. Here's Glass Onion. Oh, remember this movie? Right. Boom. It just seems like it's not like everyone who's going to see this movie is going to see it within that time period. They might say, okay, we can wait, but why not let it release in theaters, especially if you make 600, what was it? What was the number? $15 million in 600 theaters. That's insanity. There is demand to see this on the big screen. And I think it was a fun experience with the audience we had. There's a
It was a
lot of
great experience.
there was like the big reveals and like the twists that are going on, the comedic timing that is like implemented with these actors. Like I think it was just a great time, and it was packed. Like our theater was packed. I don't think there was an empty seat in the house. Did you see one near you?
No, it was completely packed. And same with the previous showings earlier in the day as well. So it just shows that demand. And Netflix, again, like what are they known for? Like staying at home, but also like binging. And they still have the binge-worthy factor that they're not straying away from. They might split a season of a television show similar to like Ozark in 2 separate months to keep you on for an extra month, right? So they're already like keeping that in a different way. Why not continue to do something like this in this capacity with their movies? I think at least their bigger movies, they should definitely look into that. The more they say they want to like get more like acclaim movies rather than just the Netflix throwaways, this is definitely an avenue for that and something that they should seriously reconsider.
It's got to be like also just like trying to maintain their identity. Like we are streamers at heart. We're only doing this like to make a quick buck or something like
Exactly.
that. You know. All right. So initial reactions, Ricky Flex. Walking out the theater. I know we had some discussions amongst ourselves. We had a couple friends that watched the movie with us. Uh, what was your ultimate takeaways, your thoughts and feelings towards the movie?
I liked it. I thought they for a sequel they nailed it. Right? It was bigger. Um, the twists were, you could say, were bigger. Right? I think they were. Um, was it longer? Yes. And I think it was longer sometimes to a bad negative, but overall, like definitely you saw everything that went into it. Compared to the first one, like they put even more into it, and with this one, and that's what you see in sequels that after the first movie's successful. So that's what was like my initial thought, but then also like it was just generally good, genuinely good. It was good to look at. The cinematography style, everything was good, like all the rich people in this and the great like atmosphere environment here on the island, the Greek island, like everything was just beautiful to look at. Great cameos, great performances by our main stars, and again the twist, like in a who done it, the twists have to hit, and the twists hit. So overall, like extremely satisfied with this movie. Some people were nervous, especially with this ensemble, even bigger than the first one with bigger names, some would say. But overall, I thought they nailed them for the most part.
It felt exciting. It looked new and it looks modernized. It seemed like the 2019 movie. It people are dressed. It seemed like it could be in any decade. Like it could have been the 1960s if you told me. I know they have like the conversations they have. They're talking about Twitter. They got the nice vehicles and things like that. I'm just saying like it felt more contemporary compared to like this one felt like ultra like this is 2022, all the modernized technology, the flashy clothes, right? The Greek island, and like you have like the basically wannabe the Edward Norton wannabe Elon Musk at the helm here. So it's like, and even Benoit Blanc just is dressing fancier, and like it has a very in your face type setting, in my opinion. With like COVID happening, it doesn't shy away from COVID. Like the first one felt a little bit more timeless. And this one felt like this is 2022 or this is 2020 setting. And you're going to make it, it's going to be like that. And just, it's going to be, for me, it might be harder to like watch, like could say in 30 years when you look at this specific time period as opposed to 2019. But I think the cast was pretty good. I love Benoit Blanc here. I thought Janelle Monáe was spectacular. We're going to dive more into the cast in a second. Um, but yeah, the overall, like when you walked out, there was a moment where I was kind of in the first part of this movie, I was saying this might be better than the original. Like I was very close to thinking that in the I want to say the first half of the movie, and then the second act it doesn't really drag, but it's just extended for such a long period of time. It just makes the first and third act feel like they were like a second long. So I liked it. I don't. It didn't cross that barrier where it's okay. This is now better than 2019's Knives Out, but I think it was pretty damn close. Do you have it past the original, or do you think it's just a little below?
I think I agree with you on almost all your statements there. I can see why people would like this better, and it goes back to the setting, the ensembles more recognizable, and the twists and the actual just elements of this movie is might be just more appealing to a younger audience or a more modernized audience.
Mm.
So I think that might be a reason why people might like this better. But overall, as like a movie itself, second act like was laggy. It did lag there's throughout, especially there's a one sequence that just kept going and going and going, and it wasn't a bad sequence. It's just like we should wrap this up at some point, and then in the finale, like the third act, the final part of the third act there, it just kept going as well and just got dragged out. So over dragged out, not to like, oh my god, like how could they do this? It was more like they're trying to really hit you over the head with the themes and everything going on, and make sure they could conceal it nicely, but it could have been done a lot more concise. So on all, like this the first act was great, by the way. Like amazing pace, great setup for who done it. It was honestly almost perfect. Just to mention that as well. Overall, though, yeah, I wouldn't say as good as the first. Um, but I also just wanted to mention just real quick because you mentioned the more modernized setting. it's just interesting because they both like kind of go after like the wealthy, right? But like the two different types of wealth. This one, like the more modernized tech or um like gamer, Twitch streamer, fashion, stylistic kind of money, and the other one's inheritance, like old school money, just by the house itself, right? The mystery novelist. So it just kind of tackles those two types of wealth and the wealth norms that we look at, especially as Americans, but also just people in general, which I thought is very interesting because they're going to do a third one. Like, what kind of wealth norms are going to do for that one? Or is it going to be something completely different? I don't know. That's another thing I thought. I think I preferred the latter because I think I appreciate movies that can last throughout time on a modern like era base. So I think I picked the first one in that regard, but it was nice to see something completely different, similar to what sequels should be doing, anyways.
It's hard to be viewed as a classic that is like very specific pandemic setting, and it's making like pop culture references very specific to that time. But I agree with what you're saying. I like, because this is not a sequel. This is like another installment of an anthology series. The only carryover really is like Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc. And it makes it easy to like, okay, if this character's run, we don't have to worry about continuing into the third Knives Out. At least we don't think so, right? Benoit Blanc, we just have to worry about his arc a little bit, and we see like diving into more of his personal life in this story, so it does well in that aspect for the sequel. But you're right, like with the themes, it's good to have some type of connectivity here with the theme, the overarching idea of like wealth, greed, and how basically terrible these people who run the world truly are, according to Ryan Johnson. And you mentioned also like the first act, you like the intros, the character intros. I thought we could just jump to the performances here because that's one of the best parts of the original Knives Out is to talk about the direction those characters went, the breakout of Ana de Armas, like the transition of Chris Evans, right? The return of Jamie Lee Curtis. Let's talk about some actors here because it's one of our favorite things to do. Um, I guess let's start with Benoit Blanc, Daniel Craig, and his change from the first movie to this one. Did you dig the idea of like diving into his personal story here? And do you think it like the movie was better off for doing so?
To be honest, I didn't really care for it. I thought it was funny. No spoilers, so I'm not going to say anything. But
Mm-hmm.
uh, yeah, like, I didn't really care for it. Didn't find it good or bad. Just it kind of expands on him himself, who he is, and maybe they do a little deeper now that we have that, something that we can carry over to the third one, as you mentioned. Other than that, not really. But as a performance, as Benoit Blanc, the character, you saw like he was definitely funnier. Like even like this movie in general was funnier, more of a comedy, I would say, even at points than a whodunit. And I think that's kind of crazy to say. Again, I think kind of leans towards I'd rather have that comedic element as the surprise that kind of it lingers, saying, "Oh, that might have been too funny," but it wasn't. That's like Knives Out. This one's like this almost was a complete flat out comedy at times. Also with Blanc, like he was definitely more sentimental and definitely more uncomfortable in this, but
Mm-hmm.
like more vulnerable. And as acting performance, that's what you want to see out of these characters. But he's still that alpha throughout, similar to what we talk about in like a John Wick or a Liam Neeson, like people like characters that just like get the job done and they're the best at their craft, or like they're geniuses in their craft, such as I don't know, like a Jesse Eisenberg in The Social Network. They just like they're an alpha on the screen and like in their craft. And Benoit Blanc was throughout, even though he was more vulnerable, funnier, sentimental in this, still like he's a beast, absolute beast,
Yeah,
and a joy to watch on the screen.
and I feel like it in the first act of the movie, they really start to talk about his personal life, how he's kind of down on his luck. He's lost a couple cases and then moving on from there. But it feels like it doesn't take away the shine from the rest of the cast. And I think that's the most important thing. That's what this movie franchise has done so well thus far. And you got to have some type of growth for the character that is going to be like a constant or yeah, a constant or a character that's going to be here for the foreseeable future. So to have him grow at least a tiny bit, I don't think it hurt the movie. I would have liked actually for them to like almost come a little bit more full circle in the third act. It seemed like they kind of abandoned what they introduced in the first act, and they said, "Okay, yeah, let's just keep on moving with the story."
Great
But
point.
yeah, it helps progress the story. But I just felt like if you're gonna do it, you got to also like continue. Like it's not just like, oh, it's just a blip in the pan. Like, yes, this is how he's doing. He's got to take the case. Um, in that case, it almost felt like Pink Panther, and how they have those installments, not a lot of carryover of the cast. There is a little bit, obviously, but just to have him be himself, right? Be recognizable, right? Do his thing, do what the audience expects, but so much craziness and chaos happening around them. But it's also just flat out hilarious in a lot of these moments. I do want to hit on the comedy a little bit, not just say it was over the top, but like it felt like it was crutching on. And we talk about how modern this movie was. It felt it was crutching on really like pop culture moments, and it felt like they were like there was a lot of cameos, like, and like there was a few cameos that we half were expecting, half not, some that I thought were like ill-fitting, and then there was also just like making fun of 2022 culture that I don't think is going to once again like live on, I think, well, 10, 20, 30 years later. And I was listening to an interview with Ryan Johnson. He said it was important that his whodunits are going to be like in the time period, and they don't have to be like viewed as what a classic like traditionally is. But I think it just helps for like if you're trying to introduce a new movie to a new viewer, right, or an older movie to a new viewer. I think it only helps, right? So did you think like the comedy was clutching too hard onto the idea of 2020 and like how a disastrous of a year that was? Did that hit your mind at all?
So compared to what we've seen out of a lot of movies and comedies specifically, and I'm gonna lump it in that category for this because that's where you kind of see like the meta aspects in movies. Like things are too meta. Things are like they're trying to clinch on a specific era. A lot of times in comedies, it does that. And this, I thought, for the most part, it did a great job actually including it and assimilating it, such as COVID. They didn't overblow it, I would say. I think they used it
Yeah,
for
I agree.
Blanc's character, and, like, they were wearing masks in the beginning, but then they spun it in a clever way in the first act. So then the rest of the time, it's like, it might've got brought up here or there, but more as a joke because these people are so rich and, like, they're on a private island anyways in 2020. So, like, they did it in a way that made it blend very well, especially with the different types of characters that are in this ensemble. And then overall, just in 2020, I would agree with that statement. I just think that I would just say that, on a positive note, I should say, like the Kate Hudson character and like some of the aspects that she's done, I actually thought it was like definitely a beneficial part to actually not developing her character, but like helping with the storyline all blend together and the actual twists and everything going on. I thought they did a great job with that. And not just with Hudson, but other people as well. And I'm just not going to spoil anything. But I actually thought Ryan Johnson did a great job blending the quote unquote meta, but it wasn't. It was perfectly fine. Parts to actually make it work with the story at large, which I thought was great.
Yeah, and I'm being a little harsh, I guess, but I like the pandemic stuff was not an issue with me whatsoever. Like to me, it was just like they were shooting during that time, and like it's like happening, like and especially overseas. Like it makes sense with the story that they put together. It was just more of the extra stuff and like the shout outs that they had during the movie. I'm just like, what the hell are we doing right now? It felt like almost like a Space Jam type moment to me. I'm like,
Mm.
this necessary? Like, was this really that funny? Like to me,
Well, it
some of
wasn't
those moments
necessary, to
some of
be
those
clear.
moments, like, I just didn't find funny, you know? I thought it was just the characters being themselves is what was funny rather than with the additional add-ons, you know?
Yeah, I guess, like, what I
Um,
hang my like, what I'm remembering right now, I remember the parts that were important that relate to the real world, like, today, that we could
yeah.
all connect to, I guess, is what I'm thinking, but you're right, but I don't think it was overblown at all. I think, yeah, you're gonna have those in a movie that's about excess, really, and about, like, bragging about your money. So I think, like, it kinda made sense for me, but I totally understand your point.
Let's go to the cast. Who do you think was a standout here, Ricky Flex? If you had to pick one, maybe put aside Benoit Blanc just because he's a constant between these two movies, who do you think was a standout here?
Overall, performance-wise, has to be Janelle Monáe, has to be. Um, she was great. Definitely, first act, not much to do. And for good reason, not much to do. But then turns it on second act, and throughout the rest of the film was a force. So it has to be her next. And then I would say Edward Norton, good comeback for him. This was great. He was good. Kate Hudson, kind of the ditz of the group, very good in this as well. I think those four are kind of in a league of their own, unless I'm forgetting anyone. The rest of the crew was just underutilized, in my opinion. Again, it wasn't already a long runtime, so maybe not underutilized is the right word, but just like I don't know, was in and out utilized. I don't know the right word because it already was long. but maybe they could have evened it out, balanced it out more, or give him some more shine during that runtime, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So overall, a good ensemble, but definitely if you go Blanc and Monet, the first two, and then the next tier is Norton and Hudson for me.
Yeah, I like the first three you said. I thought Edward Norton was great in this, and I think he was honestly perfectly cast for like the Elon Musk type dude who thinks he's all that. It seems like Edward Norton, I don't know. He doesn't seem like he's consistently working. You know, he flies in every once in a while, and then he reminds everyone how good of an actor he is. And I think he honestly knew what he was doing with this part, and like I think he understood the assignment. Janelle Monáe layered performance, and you'll see why when you see the movie. Benoit Blanc, he brought it again in a different type of setting, and he almost like as you said appears much more vulnerable, and it shows like Daniel Craig does a pretty damn good job. He's not just good at Bond; he can play this Benoit Blanc character very, very well. I guess other than that, man, I was a little disappointed with a couple of these characters. Dave Bautista, I feel bad for him. And I know he wants to be like viewed as a serious actor, but at this point, it just seems like he is typecast in every single project that he's in. I know he's doing the M. Night Shyamalan movie, which looks like a little bit different from the trailer. It looks like it's a much more serious character. It seems like he's getting these roles to work with these great directors and work alongside these amazing casts, but he's just the big dumb jock pretty much in every single movie he's in. He's just carrying over the character of Drax or like just this big strong dude, like whether it be from Spectre or Dune. I wish people were giving him a little bit more respect because he clearly wants it and he wants those opportunities. But what do you think about Bautista here? Even though like he was funny and I think he did a good job at what he does, but I just want a little bit more.
Like, I understand what you're saying, and you're right. Okay, I'm afraid of the typecast. I think this, when you're in the Knives Out movie and you're doing exactly what people think who you are, that's a problem, I think. In an ensemble cast and you're doing what people think you are. But I do, like you mentioned Dune. Like I'm looking at Blade Runner 2049. Like I still think he has it in his bag. He needs to be in like an ensemble cast like this, but not Dune. Dune is different. That's just action and also just very like not a lot of shine there. But another Knives Out type of movie, but as an ensemble movie, but not a comedy. I don't
Mhm.
know what that would be. Probably like a thriller horror
Like the
movie.
Shyamalan he's doing.
Yes, but like he's kind of looks like he's the villain or like the second top billing, like in that. You know what I mean? I think he needs to be kind of hidden, like Blade Runner 2049. Not a lot of screen time, but when he's on the screen, he does very well. He just needs that limelight to continue to build up his resume like that, rather than doing like the Stuber movie or this. I think we're past that for him, and I do understand what you're saying, but overall, just relating back to this movie, he did his job. He put in his
He
shift.
did. Yeah.
He's like the fourth liner on a good Stanley Cup winning team, NHL team. He freaking is the best fourth liner there is. He fights. He gets in the corners.
Just do your
He's willing to
job.
throw the body. He does his job. And this, he did exactly his job. Exactly what you think he is in this movie going into it. Yes, he accomplishes that.
I also like, and you're saying like the expectations for these cast members. I was like pleasantly surprised by a few choices made regarding these cast members, judging by what thought we were going to get with the trailer. I love it when trailers do that, like the diversion they use. And like, no spoilers here, but certain characters have more screen time, certain characters have less screen time than you expect. And it's, some that I think are supremely talented do a great job. You might spend more time than you think, you know? Um, Kate Hudson, I thought was good. I feel like that's also a role that Kate Hudson would be cast as. I think it's almost in the same vein as Dave Bautista, where the rich glamour girl, the almost famous girl that grew up, that's what we feels like we're dealing with here. And then Catherine Hahn, that's another one I wanted to discuss. Catherine Hahn seems like she was a layup to be in a sequel to Knives Out. Maybe the one I was most excited to see in this movie. Little disappointed, just judging by like her character, and I said it in the synopsis there. She's like a politician rather than more. Maybe I was expecting more of like a Kate Hudson type of role for her, something a little bit more eccentric. But once again, she wasn't bad. She's dealt with the characters she's given, the script that she has to read and play out. But I thought overall cast was very good. Jessica Hemwick is yet again like seems like it's weird how she's like in these movies but gets like minimal screen time and is underutilized. Going back to like Matrix Resurrections and now Knives Out. It's just something where it's like maybe she's getting her name out there and it's just not. She's just not up with the greats right now. When you're trying to like compete with screen time with like Edward Norton and like James Bond, you're gonna have a tough time.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think also it was interesting because I remember like to go back to what you were saying with the trailers, like they did a good job promoting this film, I think, and this ensemble. But throughout each of those, I don't know if I forget if I brought this up on the pod or just to you offline, but I remember I was like, they keep forgetting to bring up one of the names that they brought up in the ensemble, like in the cat when this movie got announced and the cast got announced, and that's Ethan Hawke.
But
And
you kept on missing that, and I kept on telling you it wasn't an extended part. It was reported that from
I
the get
know,
go.
but you've been telling me that, but I was like, I'm still interested. I'm satisfied at seeing Ethan Hawke in this movie. That's all I'll say with that.
And like he's not the only like surprise like guest we get in this movie, and we'll
Yep,
just
yep.
leave it at that, you know. But before we get to our scores, I just want you to, unless you have, do you have any final thoughts before I get to the final question before we hit the scores?
I just have thoughts back to the original, but that's pretty much it.
I think also what they should do after they make 4 or 5 of these, they should do like almost like what you have those like game shows like Survivor do and The Amazing Race, where you have like an all-star, like where it's like all these movies are connected and you get one member of each cast, like the best member of each cast come back and somehow they're united into a fifth, maybe like the wrap up to the franchise. I think that would be awesome. And I don't know if these are ever going to end because it seems like Ryan Johnson just has a blast writing these. And it seems like the set is definitely a fun place to be with all these eccentric characters running around and like saying such like fun, like playing such fun roles. I think they should do like an all-star Knives Out.
That would be hilarious. That would
Uh,
be that like that writing would have to put on like a master class of writing to get that done. And I think Ryan Johnson might be the guy to do it and who done it.
it's like the end game for whodunits. You know,
Maybe
that's
do a
what it is.
trilogy and then do like another All-Star edition, like special, like a MCU special or something like that.
Ah, that's pretty good. So what do you give score for Glass Onion and Knives Out Mystery?
I guess just one more thing on the characters themselves. If I had to pick a cast that I liked better, I would still pick the first one over this one. I think this one was more glamour, more style, bigger names, but I think they just had more to do in the first one, and I think the interrogations helped to really get you involved with these characters and who they were,
One on
and
ones.
yeah, the one-on-ones. I think that just helped so much. So I think I like the characters ensemble in the first one more than this one, and also, I also would just say going back to or now going to my score. Another thing that I thought that the original thought why it was so much better, or not so much, was better than this one, was that I just felt more suspense throughout that one. I think because this one was just funnier, more of a comedy, but I felt more suspense than the whodunit feel. And like think about it, like Knives Out, like that had Oscar like appeal. This one, I just think it has the Oscar appeal because the first one had Oscar appeal. I don't think this one will on its own. So overall, like this was a great sequel. I couldn't really have asked for much more. I liked it. I'm stalling with a score. I'm gonna go, barring seeing it again. I'm going 88.
Wow.
88 out of
This is like the
100.
second straight movie I think you've had a higher score than I have. This is an anomaly for this podcast. I think people could tell by the way we spoke about it that you're a little bit higher than I am on it. But 86 out of 100 for me. 86. Definitely very good. Felt like a sequel at times, even though it's not really a sequel. Kind of abandoned Benoit Blanc's like his personal journey and like the latter half of the movie. But
Good
overall,
point.
just the supporting cast like still they hit the beats. I thought it was a funny movie, and I'm excited to see more of these because it seems like this is an older form of movie making, and it's not one that's popularized nowadays. I think Ryan Johnson single handedly is bringing this back. Like people, like they tried it with Death in the Nile, failed. And then you have this a follow up to Knives Out. People are like, they're loving this. There is actually a demand for these movies that people grew up watching, you know? So love, love, love that. Give it more. Give us more, excuse me.